Modal. Modals are flexible dialog prompts, and they come with different options for functionality and styling. Here we see that we can use a link as a trigger and a button as a trigger. We then have a normal modal like so, which we can close on the close button, on the close symbol in the top right corner, by clicking outside, or by using the escape key. The action button doesn't do anything in these examples. If we have a long text, it will be possible to scroll inside it. We can choose to have a small or a narrow modal, or a large, which is a wide modal. We can have a modal without any fade animation, appearing and disappearing instantly. We can have a modal without backdrop, so when you click outside of the modal, nothing happens. We can also have a modal without keyboard functionality, so when I press the escape key, nothing happens. Let's see how we build this. First, to use a link as a trigger, we need to add the data toggle attribute, the value modal, and the data target attribute, with the value being the ID of the modal. If we would use a button, we would change the anchor tag to button, add the type button, and some classes like so, a primary button. Then we still have the data toggle attribute with the value modal, and the data target attribute with the value being the ID of our modal. Okay, now let's call this for modal like so. And let's create our modal. We start with a wrapping div element with the class modal and the class fade. The fade class is what gives us the fading animation. We give it the ID modal, which we referred to before, and then the tab index -1, so it won't be possible to tap inside of it when it's not open. We give it the role attribute with the value dialog, which is for accessibility reasons, and also the area labeled by attribute for accessibility, with the value being the ID of our label, which we'll create later. So we will call it modal title, and the area hidden attribute with the value true, which is also for accessibility. So this says that the modal is currently hidden. This is changed to false automatically when we open our modal. Okay, now let's create another div tag with the class modal dialog and give it the role of document, again for accessibility. Inside this, we create a div with the class modal content. You might wonder why we need all these nested div elements. Part of the answer is that these different div elements are used to position our modal in the right way. Now we create the actual content. So first we can create a modal header using the class modal header. And inside this, we'll create a heading for the title of our modal with the class modal title and the ID being modal title. We were referring to this ID up here from the parent div with the area labeled by attribute. We'll give it the text modal title and close the h5 tag. So this simply says that this modal is labeled by the title inside of it. Okay, then we create the close button, which is a button of the type button, the class close to position it, the data dismiss attribute, the value modal to hook up the JavaScript functionality, and the area label attribute with the value close for accessibility reasons. Inside our button, we add the times symbol, and we want to hide this for screen readers, so we add a span tag with the area hidden attribute with value true, like so. Let's try and see what it looks like now. Now we have a modal appearing only with a title. Great. So let's now create our modal body, which is a div tag with the class modal body. Inside this, I'll just paste in some lorem ipsum text and put this in a p tag. Let's have a look again. Now we see the modal with our paragraph inside. Finally, we want to create the modal footer, which is the div tag with the class modal footer. Inside this, we have two buttons. The first one will get the classes btn and btn primary, which will be our action button, which we won't use for these examples. And the other button will be a secondary button with the data dismiss attribute with the value modal and the text close. So this is the same attribute as up here, so this will close our modal. Let's see this. Now we have the action and close button. Nothing happens when I click the action button. When I click the close button, the modal closes. Great. So let's just quickly see that this also works with long text. So in our learning kit, we'll just open the modal with long text and copy this. Go back and insert it right here. Now when we open our modal, we can see that it's possible to scroll inside. Great. I'll just undo this. To make this a small modal, we need to add a class to our modal dialog element up here. So we need to add the class modal sm. When we open it now, we see that it has become narrow. If we want to create a large modal, we add the class modal lg. When we click it, we see that we have a normal modal, but this is because our window is too narrow. So if we open it up a little bit, making it wider, when we click it, we see that we have the large modal. We'll just remove this class again and have a look at our regular modal one more time. Okay. Now let's remove the animation. To do this, we simply remove the word fade from the modal element. When I click it now, it appears and disappears instantly. If we want to prevent the backdrop functionality, which is the ability to close it by clicking outside of the modal, we can add the data backdrop attribute with the value static. Now, when we open it, nothing happens when we click outside of it. We need to use the buttons or the escape key. So what if we don't want to use the escape key either? We can remove this functionality by adding the data keyboard attribute with the value false. Now, when we open up our modal, when I press the escape key, nothing happens. And when I click outside, we still have the backdrop functionality disabled. So we need to use the buttons to close this modal. This was all about the modal component.